I remember the day Robert kissed me goodbye like it was any other morning. The Portland rain tapping on our bedroom window, the smell of freshly brewed coffee drifting upstairs. 45 years of marriage, and I still made his coffee exactly how he liked it. Dark roast, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. He straightened his tie in the hallway mirror, the same one we'd bought when we first moved into our West Hills home 30 years ago. He smiled at me, said he'd be home late because of a strategic planning session with his new assistant. Then, he was gone. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. That was the last day I ever made Robert Wilson his coffee. The last day I believed in our marriage. And the first day I realized just how powerful I truly was. Because while my husband was planning his exit from our marriage, he had no idea. I'd been the majority owner of Wilson Tech Solutions for the past 20 years. The company that bore his name, that he bragged about building from nothing, was legally mine. And I was finally ready to claim what had always been rightfully mine. I met Robert Wilson during my final year at Reed College, back when Portland was still considered a sleepy northwestern city rather than the tech hub it would eventually become. I was studying business administration with dreams of running my own company someday, while Bob was the charming economics major who always had big plans but struggled with the practical aspects of execution. We fell in love quickly, the kind of all-consuming college romance that feels destined. When we graduated in 1978, I had 3 job offers from prestigious firms in Seattle and San Francisco. Robert had none. His grades were mediocre, but his charisma was undeniable. He could talk his way into any room, convince anyone of anything. It was what I loved about him, this boundless confidence that seemed to make the impossible feel within reach. "Barbara," he told me the night before I had to decide on a job offer, "I have this idea for a tech consulting business. Companies are going to need help navigating all these new computer systems. We could be at the forefront." I believed in him. So instead of taking that management position at Mason Industries in San Francisco, I took an administrative job at a small accounting firm in Portland so we could stay together. I worked 60-hour weeks, building a network of clients while Robert developed his business plan for what would eventually become Wilson Tech Solutions. In those early years, I was the one who paid our rent. I was the one who covered our health, insurance. I was the one who set aside savings while Robert attended networking events and business conferences, always on the verge of his big break. "Just a little longer, Barb," he'd say, kissing my forehead when he'd come home late from another business dinner. "I'm making connections that will set us up for life." When he finally launched the company in 1983, it was my $45,000 in savings that provided the startup capital. Money I'd been putting aside for our first home, for the children we planned to have. I never hesitated. I believed in us, in our shared dream. "We'll put it in your name," I suggested. "Wilson Tech Solutions has a nice ring to it." He agreed, eagerly. Too eagerly, perhaps. I should have recognized the pattern then. For the next 15 years, I worked behind the scenes at Wilson Tech. Officially, I was the office manager, but in reality, I was much more. I managed client relationships, while Robert made the sales pitches. I developed the organizational systems that became our company's backbone. I interviewed and hired the key staff members who would eventually become our executive team. And I did it all while raising our 2 children, Olivia and Ethan, often alone as Robert traveled for business. The company grew steadily through the 1990s, riding the wave of the tech boom. Robert became the face of Wilson Tech, appearing in local business journals and speaking at industry conferences. I remained in the background, the supportive wife who managed the household and kept the operational side of the business running smoothly. "You're the heart of this family and this company, Barbara," Robert would tell me at company Christmas. Parties, his arm around my waist, his voice just loud enough for others to hear. "I couldn't do any of this without you." And I believed him. I cherished those moments of acknowledgement, rare as they were. When our attorney, James Keller, suggested restructuring the company in 2003, it was presented as a tax strategy. As we sat in his wood-paneled office overlooking the Willamette River, he explained the benefits of transferring majority ownership to me. With Barbara as the primary shareholder, you'll qualify for several government contracts as a woman-owned business, James explained. Plus, there are significant tax advantages. Robert hesitated only momentarily before agreeing. It's just paperwork, right? Nothing really changes in how we run things? James nodded, but glanced at me with something I couldn't quite read in his expression. Legally, Barbara will own 51% of Wilson Tech Solutions, but day-to-day operations can remain exactly as they are. I signed the papers that day, becoming the majority owner of a company that was generating $12 million in annual revenue. Yet nothing changed in how we operated. Robert continued making unilateral decisions. He continued referring to my company in interviews and at industry events. And I continued supporting from the shadows, never correcting him, never asserting my legal position. By our 40th wedding anniversary in 2018, Wilson Tech Solutions had grown into a regional powerhouse with offices in Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver. We had over 200 employees and annual revenue exceeding $50 million. We celebrated with a lavish party at the Eastwood Hotel, where Robert gave a speech about how he had built the company from nothing, thanking me almost as an afterthought for handling the home front. I smiled and raised my champagne glass along with everyone else. The perfect supportive wife, always gracious, never demanding recognition. That same year, Robert hired Jessica Miller as his executive assistant. She was 32, with a business degree from UCLA, and the kind of polished confidence that reminded me of myself at her age, before I had subordinated my ambitions to Robert's dreams. She's incredibly efficient, Robert told me the first time he mentioned her. You'll like her, Barb. She reminds me of you when we were younger. I met Jessica at the company holiday party that December. She was indeed impressive, articulate, poised, with sharp insights about the business. I noticed how Robert's eyes followed her around the room, how he leaned in slightly too close when she spoke. It triggered something in me, a distant warning bell, but I silenced it, as I had silenced so many of my instincts over the decades. Jessica is helping me modernize our approach, Robert began saying in the months that followed. She has such fresh perspectives. Business dinners ran later. Weekend strategy sessions became common. Robert started traveling with Jessica to conferences where he'd previously gone alone. I told myself this was normal, that I was being paranoid, that a man in his 60s wouldn't risk everything for a woman half his age. I was wrong. The signs accumulated slowly, then all at once. New cologne, password-protected personal phone, mysterious credit card charges at high-end restaurants on nights he claimed to be working late. The classic cliches of infidelity that I never thought would feature in my marriage. When I found the receipt for a weekend at a luxury resort in Cannon Beach, a place Robert and I had once considered our special retreat, it was like a physical blow. The reservation was for 2 people during a weekend when he'd told me he was at a technology conference in San Diego. Still, I said nothing. I had spent decades perfecting the art of accommodation, of swallowing my pride, of prioritizing peace over confrontation. And perhaps, deeper than I wanted to admit, I feared what would happen if I forced the issue. Would I lose everything? Would the company suffer? Would our children be devastated by a late-life divorce? So I continued making his coffee each morning. I continued managing our household and handling my responsibilities at Wilson Tech. I continued pretending not to notice how he grew more distant, more irritable, more absent, until the morning of April 15th, 2023. The morning everything changed. Robert and I were getting ready for the annual Technology Leadership Conference in Seattle. As the majority owner of Wilson Tech Solutions, I was technically supposed to attend these industry events, though Robert had always represented the company alone. This year, however, our CFO Michael Chen had insisted I attend as well. The keynote speaker is focusing on women-owned businesses in tech, Michael had explained. Having you there would be valuable for our image. Robert had objected initially, but eventually relented with obvious reluctance. As I packed my suitcase that morning, I noticed Robert staring at his phone, his expression troubled. "Everything all right?" I asked. He looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten I was there. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Barbara, we need to talk." Those words, the harbinger of every relationship's darkest moments. I sat on the edge of our bed, the same bed we'd shared for 4 decades, and waited. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his voice strangely formal. "About life, about what I want in these next years. I'm not getting any younger, and You're having an affair with Jessica," I said quietly. He flinched, then squared his shoulders. "It's more than an affair, Barbara. I love her. We connect on a level that you and I never have. She understands my vision for the company. She challenges me intellectually. She shares your bed?" I finished. "That's crude," he snapped. "This isn't just about physical attraction. Jessica and I are partners in every sense. We're building something together." The irony of his words struck me with such force that I almost laughed. Building something together. Wasn't that what he and I had been doing for 45 years? "I see," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And what happens now?" "I want a divorce," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I've already spoken with an attorney. We can make this simple, Barbara. You'll be well taken care of, I promise. The house, a generous monthly allowance, your retirement fund. And the company?" I asked. He waved dismissively. "You never really wanted to be involved in the business side anyway. I'll buy out whatever nominal shares are in your name." Nominal shares. As if my 51% ownership was some minor technicality, some paperwork relic rather than the legal reality. "I see," I said again, feeling a strange calm settling over me. "When were you planning to tell me all this?" "After the conference," he admitted. "Jessica and I will be there together. I thought it would be easier to announce our relationship in a professional context first, then handle the personal side afterward." I nodded slowly. "You've really thought this through?" "I have," he said, looking almost relieved at my composed reaction. "I want to make this transition as painless as possible for everyone." I stood up and smoothed the wrinkles from my skirt. "Very considerate of you, Robert. I appreciate you being so forthright." He blinked, clearly surprised by my equanimity. "So you understand?" "Perfectly," I replied. "I understand exactly what's happening here." As I finished packing my suitcase, Robert hovered anxiously. "You're still coming to the conference, then?" "Of course," I said, zipping my bag closed. "As you said, it's better to handle the professional side first." He nodded, relieved again, completely missing the steel beneath my calm exterior. "I'll drive separately. I need to pick up Jessica on the way." "Fine," I said. "I'll see you both there." After Robert left, I sat alone in our bedroom for a long time, surrounded by the artifacts of our shared life. Wedding photos on the dresser, vacation souvenirs on the shelves, his reading glasses on the nightstand. 45 years of marriage, reduced to a brief conversation and a legal transaction. I picked up my phone and made 3 calls. First, to Michael Chen, our CFO and the only executive at Wilson Tech who knew I was the majority owner. "Michael, I need you to bring all the ownership documentation to Seattle, and please notify legal to be on standby." Second, to my friend, Eleanor Martinez, who had been warning me about Robert's behavior for months. "Ellie, you were right. It's happening. I need your support at the conference in Seattle tomorrow. And finally, to James Keller, our attorney. James, Robert is planning to divorce me and take the company. I need you to remind me exactly what my options are as majority shareholder. After the calls, I went to my home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a folder containing documents I had collected over the past year. Evidence of Robert's affair, records of company decisions he had made without proper authorization, copies of contracts he had signed using my electronic signature, without my knowledge. I hadn't been as oblivious as Robert assumed. I had simply been waiting, gathering information, preparing for the moment when I would finally need to stand up for myself. As I drove to Seattle that afternoon, alone for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected. Not grief, not rage, but a profound sense of liberation. For decades, I had diminished myself to magnify Robert. I had been the shadow behind his spotlight, the foundation beneath his success, the wind beneath his wings. But no more. It was time for Barbara Wilson to step into the light. I checked into the Grand Pacific Hotel in downtown Seattle and spent the evening reviewing the conference agenda. Robert was scheduled to give a presentation on innovation leadership the following morning with Jessica listed as his co-presenter. I noticed my name wasn't mentioned anywhere in the program, despite the fact that I legally owned the company being represented. Another erasure, another dismissal. But this time, it would be the last. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, a tailored charcoal suit, pearl earrings, subtle makeup. Professional, elegant, unimpeachable. As I stepped into the hotel elevator to head to the conference, my phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "I'm here. Lobby bar. Michael just arrived too." I found them sitting together in a quiet corner of the bar, Eleanor's familiar face a comfort amidst the turmoil. Michael stood as I approached, his expression grave. "I brought everything you asked for," he said, patting his briefcase. "Are you sure about this, Barbara? Once we take this step, there's no going back." "I've been going backward for 45 years, Michael," I replied. "It's time to move forward." Eleanor squeezed my hand. "We're with you, Barb. All the way." The main conference hall was already filling up when we arrived. I spotted Robert immediately, standing near the stage with Jessica beside him. They were laughing together, his hand resting casually on the small of her back with an intimacy that confirmed everything. Neither of them noticed me enter. I took a seat in the front row, directly in their line of sight. Michael sat to my right, Eleanor to my left. When Robert finally saw me, his smile faltered. He leaned down to whisper something to Jessica, whose eyes darted to me with a mixture of defiance and unease. The conference director opened the session, welcoming everyone to the annual Technology Leadership Conference. "We're particularly excited about this year's focus on diversity and tech leadership," she announced. "Our first presentation this morning comes from one of the region's most successful technology consulting firms, Wilson Tech Solutions." Robert strode onto the stage, confident as always, with Jessica following a step behind. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice resonating through the hall. "I'm Robert Wilson, founder and CEO of Wilson Tech Solutions, and this is Jessica Miller, our Director of Strategic Initiatives." Director of Strategic Initiatives, a title I'd never heard before, certainly one that hadn't been approved by the board. "Today, we're going to talk about innovation leadership and the future of tech consulting," Robert continued. "At Wilson Tech, we believe in bold vision and decisive action. I founded this company 40 years ago with nothing but determination and a dream." As he launched into his familiar origin story, a narrative that completely erased my contributions, I felt a calm clarity washing over me. I nodded to Michael, who discreetly passed me a folder. When Robert paused for effect after describing a particularly challenging period in the company's history, a crisis I had actually managed while he was on a golfing retreat, I stood up. "Excuse me," I said. my voice carrying clearly in the quiet hall. I believe there's an error in your presentation that needs correction. Robert froze, his professional smile still fixed in place, but his eyes widening with alarm. Barbara, this isn't the time. Actually, Robert, this is exactly the time, I replied, stepping toward the stage. If we're discussing leadership at Wilson Tech Solutions, then we should be accurate about who actually leads the company. I turned to face the audience, many of whom were now shifting uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the tension. For those who don't know me, I'm Barbara Wilson, and while my husband has been the face of Wilson Tech Solutions for many years, I am in fact the majority owner and legal head of the company. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Robert stepped forward, his face flushing with anger. Barbara, you're causing a scene. We can discuss this privately. Like you discussed your affair with Jessica privately? I asked, my voice steady. Or your plans to divorce me and take my company? Which private discussion are you referring to, Robert? The murmuring grew louder. Jessica had gone pale, her eyes darting between Robert and me. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued, I apologize for this unconventional start to the day. But since we're at a conference about leadership and diversity in tech, I think it's appropriate to set the record straight. I opened the folder Michael had given me and held up the ownership documents. Wilson Tech Solutions was founded in 1983 with my savings of $45,000. While my husband has been the public face of the company, I have been its operational backbone for 40 years. And since 2003, I have been its legal majority owner, with 51% of shares. I let this sink in before continuing. Yesterday, my husband informed me that he wants a divorce after 45 years of marriage. He's been having an affair with the woman standing beside him, whom he's apparently promoted to a director-level position without board approval. He planned to announce their relationship at this conference, then offer me our house and an allowance while he kept control of the company that legally belongs to me. The room had fallen completely silent. Even the conference organizers stood frozen at the back of the hall, apparently unsure whether to intervene. So in the interest of transparency and accurate leadership representation, I want to make a few announcements of my own. I gestured to Michael, who stood and joined me. Effective immediately, I am exercising my rights as majority shareholder to make the following changes. First, Robert Wilson is removed from the position of CEO of Wilson Tech Solutions. Second, our CFO Michael Chen will serve as interim CEO until a permanent replacement is selected by the board. Robert lunged for the microphone. This is absurd. You can't do this. Actually, she can, Michael said calmly, producing another document from his briefcase. As CFO, I can confirm that Mrs. Wilson has the legal authority to make these changes. Additionally, the board voted last night to support her decisions. This was news to Robert, whose face contorted with shock. The board? How did you... I called an emergency meeting, I explained. Turns out when they learned about the unauthorized decisions you've been making, including several high-risk investments and the inappropriate promotion of your girlfriend, they were quite concerned about the company's future under your leadership. I turned back to the audience, many of whom were now recording this unexpected drama on their phones. Wilson Tech Solutions will continue to provide the excellent service our clients expect, now with more transparent and ethical leadership. I apologize for this disruption and thank you for your attention. As I stepped away from the stage, Eleanor stood and applauded. Gradually, others joined in, until the entire hall was filled with the sound of clapping, whether for the drama or for my long-overdue assertion of power, I couldn't be sure. Robert stormed after me as I exited the hall, grabbing my arm roughly. You can't do this to me. I built that company. I pulled free from his grasp, looking him directly in the eyes for what felt like the first time in years. No, Robert. We built it together. The difference is, I have the paperwork to prove my contribution. You just had the spotlight. Jessica appeared behind him, her composure cracking. Robert, what's happening? What does this mean for us? He turned on her, suddenly vicious. This is your fault. If you hadn't been so insistent about coming public— My fault? She asked. You promised me everything was taken care of. You said she was just a figurehead. Their argument faded as I walked away. Eleanor's arm linked through mine, Michael following with the documentation safely returned to his briefcase. Are you okay? Eleanor asked softly. I considered the question carefully. Was I okay? My 45-year marriage had just exploded in public. My husband had betrayed me in the most cliched way possible. The carefully constructed facade of our life together had crumbled completely. And yet— I think I'm better than okay, I replied. I think I'm finally free. For the first time in decades, I slept soundly that night in my Seattle hotel room. No pretending to be asleep while Robert came to bed late. No lying awake wondering where he was. No making excuses for his absence in my mind. Just pure, untroubled rest. When morning came, I opened the curtains to reveal a rare, cloudless Seattle sky. Brilliant blue stretching over Elliott Bay. It felt like an omen, a clearing of the storms that had plagued my marriage for so long. My phone had been buzzing, relentlessly since yesterday's confrontation. Dozens of messages from our children, from friends, from Wilson Tech employees who had either witnessed the scene firsthand or heard about it through the rapid-fire grapevine of industry gossip. I hadn't responded to any of them yet. This moment was mine, this clarity precious and new. I wasn't ready to explain myself to anyone. I ordered room service, a proper breakfast with fresh berries, eggs Benedict, and a pot of Earl Grey tea. When had I last indulged myself this way? Robert always rushed through breakfast if he ate it at all. No time for luxury, he'd say, gulping coffee while checking email. But now I savored each bite, each sip, watching the ferries cross the sound and feeling for the first time in years that I was exactly where I needed to be. A knock at the door announced Eleanor's arrival. She swept in, impeccably dressed as always in a silk blouse and tailored pants, her silver hair styled in the asymmetrical bob she'd worn since we were in our 40s. You're all over tech Twitter, she announced, dropping onto the sofa in my suite. Hashtag Queen of Wilson Tech is trending. Someone recorded the whole thing yesterday. I groaned. Is that good or bad? Eleanor's laugh was bright and genuine. Are you kidding? It's magnificent. Corporate wives everywhere are cheering for you. And the female tech entrepreneurs? They're calling you their new patron saint. She pulled out her tablet and scrolled through social media posts. Listen to this one. Barbara Wilson just gave a masterclass in reclaiming your power, taking notes for my next board meeting. Despite myself, I smiled. That's flattering, but I didn't do it for public acclaim. Of course not, Eleanor said, suddenly serious. You did it because Robert left you no choice. But if your very public takedown inspires a few other women to stand up for themselves, that's a lovely bonus, don't you think? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. My daughter, always the first to weigh in on family matters. I took a deep breath and answered. Mom? Her voice was tight with concern. What's happening? Dad called last night saying you'd had some kind of breakdown at the conference. Then Ethan forwarded me a video that shows something completely different. Are you and Dad getting divorced? Yes, honey, we are. Saying it aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before, despite yesterday's confrontation. Your father has been having an affair with his assistant Jessica. He informed me yesterday morning that he wants a divorce. Oh, Mom. I could hear the shock in her voice. I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Do you need me to come up to Seattle? I'm fine, actually. Better than I've been in a long time. I glanced at Eleanor, who gave me an encouraging nod. There's something else you should know, something I should have told you and your brother years ago. What is it? I own Wilson Tech Solutions. Legally, I mean. I've been the majority shareholder since 2003. Silence stretched across the line, followed by a confused laugh. What? No, that can't be right. Dad always said, I know what your father always said, I interrupted gently. But the legal reality is different. We restructured the company in 2003, and I received 51% of the shares. Your father continued running day-to-day operations, and I allowed him to maintain the fiction that it was still his company. Another long pause. Mom, I don't even know what to say. Why would you let him take credit all these years if you actually owned the company? It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself with increasing frequency. It seemed easier at the time. Your father's identity was so wrapped up in being the boss, the entrepreneur, and I was raised to be supportive, to put family harmony above personal recognition. But it was your company too. You should have been recognized for your role. I smiled at the indignation in my daughter's voice. Olivia had always been fiercely protective of fairness, even as a child. Yes, I should have. It took me far too long to realize that. So what happens now? With the company, I mean? For now, Michael Chen is acting as interim CEO. The board will meet next week to discuss permanent leadership. And I'm exploring my options. Good, Olivia said firmly. You deserve to be acknowledged for everything you've done. I'm just sorry it took Dad's betrayal to make it happen. After promising to call her again soon, I ended the call and looked at Eleanor, who was pretending not to have been listening to every word. One child down, one to go, I said. Ethan will be harder. He worships his father. Eleanor rolled her eyes. Ethan needs to grow up and see Robert for who he really is, not who he pretends to be. Before I could defend my son, a habit I couldn't, seemed to break despite his tendency to dismiss my contributions just as his father did. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael Chen. Emergency at Wilson Tech. Robert trying to access secure servers and financial accounts. Need you at Portland HQ ASAP. I showed Eleanor the message, and within an hour, we were checked out and driving south on I-5 toward Portland. Eleanor insisted on taking the wheel, claiming my mind was needed for strategy, not navigation. In truth, I think she just wanted to use her lead foot on the open highway, something her late husband had always discouraged. What do you think Robert is after? Eleanor asked as we sped past Olympia. Financial records, client contracts, anything he could use to start a competing firm, I replied, scrolling through a series of increasingly urgent texts from Michael. Apparently, he tried to access the main server room this morning, claiming he needed to secure company assets. When security stopped him, he threw a fit about being the founder and CEO. Former CEO, Eleanor corrected with satisfaction. Yes, but many employees don't know that yet. The official announcement isn't scheduled until Monday's all-hands meeting. Eleanor pressed harder on the accelerator. Then we'd better make sure we beat him to the punch. We arrived at Wilson Tech headquarters just after noon. The modern glass building in downtown Portland had always filled me with a quiet pride. Physical proof of what Robert and I had built together, even if my name wasn't on the sign. Today, it represented something different, a battleground. The receptionist's eyes widened as I strode through the front doors. Mrs. Wilson, I didn't expect. That is, Mr. Wilson said you were still in Seattle. Change of plans, Diane, I replied calmly. Is Mr. Chen available? Yes, ma'am. He's in the main conference room with legal. They've been there all morning. As Eleanor and I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I could feel the weight of stares from employees. We passed. Word had clearly spread about yesterday's events, and uncertainty hung in the air like a fog. Michael met us at the conference room door, relief washing over his features. Thank goodness you're here. It's been challenging. Inside, the company's legal team sat around the large table, surrounded by open laptops and stacks of documents. Thomas Davis, Robert's longtime business partner and our head of sales, paced by the window, his normally jovial face creased with concern. "Barbara," he said, stepping forward to grasp my hand. "What the hell is going on?" Robert called me at 5 a.m., ranting about betrayal and coup attempts. "It's not a coup when the majority owner exercises her legal rights, Tom," I replied, "though I understand why it feels sudden to everyone. I should have been more transparent about my role years ago." Tom's eyebrows rose. "Majority owner? Since when?" "Since 2003, Michael answered before I could. "The records are clear. When we restructured to qualify for government contracts, Barbara received 51% of shares. It's been that way for 20 years. Tom sank into a chair, stunned. I had no idea. Robert always said the restructure was just a formality, that he maintained control. He maintained operational control because I allowed it, I clarified. That was my mistake, one I'm now correcting. For the next hour, we discussed the immediate challenges: securing company data, communicating with key clients, preparing a statement for employees. Robert had already reached out to several major clients, claiming that I was attempting an illegal takeover and that business would continue under his leadership once this temporary confusion is resolved. He's created login credentials for Jessica, giving her access to sensitive client information, Michael explained, showing me the security logs. We've locked them both out now, but not before they downloaded several files. "Which clients?" I asked. "Hendricks Financial, West Coast Medical Group, and the Portland Municipal Contract," Michael replied grimly. "3 of our biggest accounts." I felt a flash of both anger and grudging admiration. Robert had targeted the clients with whom he had the strongest personal relationships, the ones most likely to follow him if he started a competing firm. "We need to contact them immediately," I said. "Not through email, personal visits. They need to hear directly from leadership that Wilson Tech is stable and their projects are secure." Tom nodded. "I can handle Hendricks and West Coast. They know me almost as well as they know Robert." "I'll take Portland Municipal," I said. "The mayor's wife and I serve on the same charitable boards. A personal touch might help counter whatever story Robert has spun." As we finalized our strategy, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "This is Jessica Miller. We need to talk privately. It's important." I stared at the message, conflicting emotions surging through me. This woman had been sleeping with my husband, plotting to take my place both personally and professionally. The last thing I wanted was a private conversation with her. And yet, something in the terseness of the message intrigued me. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to reply. "What could we possibly have to talk about?" The response came. Quickly. "Robert isn't who you think he is. Neither am I. Meet me at Harbor View Cafe at 4 p.m. if you want to know the truth." I hesitated, suspicion warring with curiosity. This could easily be a trap, some scheme Robert had concocted to discredit me further. But what if it wasn't? What if there was more to this story than I understood? "I'll be there," I texted back, "but I'm bringing someone with me." "Fine. Just not Michael Chen or Tom Davis." I returned to the conference room, my mind racing. Eleanor raised an eyebrow at my distracted expression, but I shook my head slightly. Whatever Jessica wanted to tell me, I wasn't ready to share it with the entire leadership team yet. "Let's reconvene tomorrow morning," I announced. "Michael, please draft the employee communication for my review. Tom, schedule those client meetings for Monday. And I'd like security doubled until further notice." As the meeting dispersed, I pulled Eleanor aside. "Change of plans. We're having coffee with Jessica Miller at 4. Eleanor's eyes widened. "The mistress? Are you serious?" "She says she has information about Robert that I need to hear." "It's obviously a trap," Eleanor scoffed. She'll probably have a recorder ready to catch you threatening her or admitting the takeover was planned. Maybe, I acknowledged. But what if she's telling the truth? What if there's something about Robert I don't know, even after 45 years of marriage? Eleanor studied my face, then sighed dramatically. Fine. But we're sitting near the door and I'm bringing pepper spray. At precisely 4 p.m., we entered Harborview Cafe, a quiet establishment near the waterfront where business meetings often took place over artisanal coffee and discreet service. Jessica was already there, seated at a corner table with her back to the wall, looking much less polished than she had at the conference. Her eyes were rimmed with red, her normally perfect makeup slightly smudged. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat down. Her gaze flickered to Eleanor. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "Eleanor Martinez," my friend replied coolly. "Barbara's oldest friend and current bodyguard." Jessica almost smiled. "I figured you wouldn't come alone. I wouldn't have either." "You said you had something important to tell me," I prompted, not interested in small talk. Jessica glanced around, then leaned forward. "First, I want you to know that I didn't know you owned the company. Robert told me he was the sole owner, that you were just a silent partner with a small percentage for tax purposes. Is that supposed to make me feel better about you sleeping with my husband?" She flinched. "No, nothing excuses that betrayal, but there's something else you should know, something more important than our relationship." She pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, then slid it across the table. "Take a look at these." On the screen was a spreadsheet showing a series of financial transactions, large sums moving from Wilson Tech accounts to something called Atlas Ventures. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Atlas Ventures doesn't exist," Jessica said quietly. "It's a shell company Robert created 3 years ago. He's been siphoning money from Wilson Tech, over $5 million so far." I stared at her, disbelief warring with a terrible suspicion. "That's a serious accusation. Why should I believe you?" "Because I helped him set it up," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have a background in finance. Robert hired me specifically for my flexibility with accounting principles. He promised me a percentage of the funds once we'd accumulated enough to leave the country." Eleanor made a choking sound. "You're admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud?" Jessica nodded miserably. "Yes, and I'll face the consequences. But you need to know what you're dealing with. Robert isn't just leaving you for me. He's planning to leave the country with millions in company funds." My mind raced, trying to process this new information. If this is true, why are you telling me now? Why not continue with the plan? "Because yesterday changed everything," Jessica replied. "When I saw you stand up in that conference hall, when I realized you actually owned the company, I understood I wasn't just participating in a marital betrayal. I was helping steal from someone who had legitimate claim to those assets." "Very convenient timing for your conscience to kick in," Eleanor remarked skeptically. Jessica flushed. "Think what you want, but there's more." She swiped to another screen showing a series of emails. "Robert has been in contact with several of your competitors, offering to bring key clients and proprietary methodologies with him in exchange for a leadership position. He's been planning this exit for over a year." I skimmed the emails, my stomach tightening with each line. They detailed meetings, proposals, potential compensation packages, all conducted behind my back, all explicitly offering Wilson Tech's intellectual property as a bargaining chip. "He can't do this," I said finally. "These methodologies are protected by patents and trademarks. The client relationships are bound by contracts with non-solicitation clauses." Jessica laughed bitterly. "Do you think Robert cares about legal niceties at this point? He believes he's entitled to everything Wilson Tech has created because he sees himself as Wilson Tech. The legal reality that you own the company is, to him, just an inconvenient technicality." I sat back, absorbing the full implications of what Jessica was sharing. If she was telling the truth, and the documentation certainly looked legitimate, then Robert wasn't just leaving me for a younger woman. He was attempting to destroy the company we had built together, to strip it of assets, clients, and intellectual property before disappearing with millions in stolen funds. "Why should I trust you?" I asked directly. "You've been sleeping with my husband, helping him embezzle from our company, planning to run away with him. Now suddenly you're a whistleblower? What changed?" Jessica's composed facade cracked slightly. "Two things changed. First, I discovered you actually owned the company, which means Robert lied to me about something fundamental. And second," she hesitated, taking a deep breath. "Last night, after the conference, when everything fell apart, I saw a side of Robert I'd never seen before. His rage, his contempt for you, for the law, for anyone who stands in his way. It scared me." "He has a temper," I acknowledged, memories of Robert's occasional outbursts flashing through my mind. "This was different," Jessica insisted. "When he realized he couldn't access the company accounts anymore, that his plans were falling apart, he threatened me. Said if I didn't help him find another way to get the money, he'd make sure I went down for all of it. That he had emails showing I was the mastermind." Eleanor and I exchanged glances. That sounded exactly like Robert. Charming and supportive until crossed, then suddenly vicious and self-protective. "I have copies of everything," Jessica continued, pushing a flash drive across the table. "The transfers to Atlas Ventures, the emails to competitors, records of overseas accounts he's established. Use it however you want. Turn it over to the authorities, confront him, whatever. I just can't be part of this anymore." I picked up the flash drive, turning it over in my fingers. "What do you want in return?" "Nothing," she said, then reconsidered. "Actually, that's not true. I want immunity from prosecution. I'll testify about everything, cooperate fully with any investigation. I know I've done wrong, but I want a chance to make it right without spending the next decade in prison." I studied her face, searching for deception. "That's not my decision to make. That's up to prosecutors if it comes to that." "But your recommendation would carry weight," she pressed. "All I'm asking is that you acknowledge my cooperation if this goes to court." I weighed my options carefully. If Jessica was telling the truth, the information she was providing could be crucial in protecting Wilson Tech from Robert's schemes. If she was lying, playing some elaborate game on Robert's behalf, well, the flash drive itself might reveal that. "I'll consider it," I said finally. "But first, I need to verify what you've told me." Jessica nodded, standing up to leave. "That's fair. You can reach me at this number. And Mrs. Wilson, I truly am sorry. For everything. Not that it matters much now." After she left, Eleanor let out a long breath. "Well, that was unexpected. Do you believe her?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "But we need to check these documents immediately. If Robert really has been embezzling funds and planning to take clients to competitors, we have bigger problems than our divorce." We returned to Wilson Tech headquarters, where I asked Michael to meet us in my rarely used office. I hadn't maintained a regular presence at the company in years, preferring to work from home when necessary. My office had become something of a shrine to the company's history. Awards on the walls, photos from milestone events, the original business plan framed near the door. I handed the flash drive to Michael. "I need you to check these financial records against our actual accounts. Look for transfers to something called Atlas Ventures over the past 3 years." Michael's brow furrowed. "Atlas Ventures? I don't recognize that name from our partnership roster." "That's because it doesn't exist," I explained. "At least not legitimately. Jessica Miller just provided evidence suggesting Robert has been embezzling company funds through this shell corporation." Michael's eyes widened. Wow. That's a serious accusation." "Yes, it is, and we need to verify it immediately, quietly, before Robert realizes we're onto him." While Michael began examining the financial records, I sank into my desk chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the past 24 hours was wearing off, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. Eleanor perched on the edge of my desk. "You okay?" "Not really," I admitted. I knew Robert could be selfish, even cruel when crossed. But this level of deception, of calculated betrayal, it makes me question everything about our marriage. Did I ever really know him at all? "Maybe not," Eleanor said gently. "Or maybe he changed over time, became someone different from the man you married. People do, you know." But to steal from his own company? To plan an escape with millions in embezzled funds? That's not just changing, that's criminal. Before Eleanor could respond, Michael looked up from his computer, his expression grim. "She's telling the truth, Barbara. I've found the transfers, $5. $3 million over the past 3 years, all to Atlas Ventures. The payments were categorized as consulting fees and research partnerships, but I can't find any actual services rendered or research produced." I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this final betrayal. "Can we recover the funds?" "I'm not sure," Michael replied. "I'll need to talk to our bank, possibly get law enforcement involved. This is beyond standard financial irregularities. This is fraud." "Then that's what we'll do," I said, my resolve hardening. "Contact our attorneys immediately. Tell them we need to file a police report and freeze any accounts associated with Atlas Ventures." As Michael stepped out to make the calls, I turned to Eleanor. "I need to tell the children before this becomes public. They should hear it from me, not see it in some news report. Do you want me to stay while you call them?" I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. But thank you, Ellie, for everything. After Eleanor left, I sat in my office as the evening light faded, gathering my courage to make the hardest phone calls of my life. How do you tell your children that their father, the man they've looked up to and admired, has not only betrayed their mother but committed serious financial crimes that could send him to prison? I decided to call Olivia first. My daughter had always been the more level-headed of my children, the one who could process difficult information with clarity. "Mom, what's going on? I've been trying to reach Dad all day," she answered on the second ring. "Honey, there's something else I need to tell you about your father," I began. Something I just discovered myself. As gently as possible, I explained what Jessica had revealed, what Michael had confirmed, the embezzlement, the plans to flee the country, the attempted theft of clients and intellectual property. Olivia listened in stunned silence. When I finished, she let out a shaky breath. "Oh my God. He could go to prison for this." "Yes," I acknowledged. "He likely will if these allegations are proven in court." "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do. File a police report, cooperate with any investigation, protect the company and its employees. Beyond that? I don't know yet." "Have you told Ethan?" I sighed. "He's my next call. I'm not looking forward to it." "Do you want me to tell him?" Olivia offered. "Or at least be on the line with you. You know how he gets. He'll want to blame someone, and that someone will probably be you." She was right. Ethan had always been quick to defend his father, to see him through a lens of hero worship rather than reality. Maybe that would be better. "Can you come over to my hotel? I'm staying at the Riverside until I figure out what to do about the house." "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Olivia promised. After ending the call, I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Portland skyline as it lit up against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Robert was probably plotting his next move, unaware that his carefully constructed schemes were unraveling. I wondered if he felt any remorse, any regret for throwing away 45 years of marriage, for betraying the company we had built together, for potentially destroying the legacy we had planned to leave our children. Somehow, I doubted it. The Robert I thought I knew, The ambitious but principled entrepreneur, the devoted if sometimes distant father, might have felt remorse. But that man, if he had ever truly existed, was gone now. In his place was someone I barely recognized. Calculating, ruthless, willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to get what he wanted. As I gathered my things to meet Olivia, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you've won, Barbara? This is just the beginning. You have no idea what's coming, are?" I stared at the message, a chill running through me despite the warm spring evening. Robert had never threatened me before, not in all our years together. Even at his most frustrated or angry, he had never made me feel physically afraid. Until now. I quickly forwarded the message to our attorney, then called the hotel to arrange for additional security. Whatever Robert was planning, whatever beginning he was threatening, I needed to be prepared. As I drove to the hotel to meet Olivia, I realized that the confrontation at the conference, dramatic as it was, had indeed been just the first step in what would likely be a long and painful battle. I had reclaimed my company, yes, but the war, for my security, my reputation, perhaps even my safety, was just beginning. And this time, I wouldn't be caught unprepared. This time, Barbara Wilson was ready to fight. Olivia was waiting in the hotel lobby when I arrived, pacing near the ornate fountain that dominated the space. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her face tense with worry. The moment she saw me, she rushed forward and enveloped me in a tight hug. "Mom," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry about all of this." I returned her embrace, drawing strength from her presence. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart." We made our way to my suite, where I'd ordered dinner to be waiting. Neither of us had much appetite, but I insisted we at least try to eat something. As we picked at our food, Olivia filled me in on what she knew. "Dad's been calling everyone," she said, stabbing listlessly at a piece of salmon. "Family, friends, business associates. He's telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you're being manipulated by Michael Chen, who wants to take over the company." I sighed. "That's not surprising. Your father has always been skilled at controlling the narrative." "He called Daniel last night," Olivia continued, referring to her husband. "Tried to get him to talk some sense into me about supporting you. Said you were destroying the family legacy." A bitter laugh escaped me. The family legacy he was planning to run away from with his girlfriend and millions in stolen funds. Olivia reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I know, it's unbelievable. I keep thinking there must be some explanation, some misunderstanding. Dad has always been ambitious, sometimes even ruthless in business, but this, embezzlement, planning to flee the country, it doesn't sound like him at all." I understood her struggle. I had been grappling with the same dissonance since Jessica's revelation. How could the man I'd shared my life with for 45 years be capable of such calculated betrayal? "People can hide parts of themselves," I said softly. "Even from those closest to them, even for decades." Our conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. When I opened it, Ethan stood in the hallway, his tall frame vibrating with tension. At 38, he was the spitting image of his father. The same strong jaw, the same penetrating blue eyes, even the same habit of running his hand through his hair when agitated as he was doing now. "What the hell is going on, Mom?" he demanded without preamble, striding past me into the suite. "Dad says you've lost your mind, that you're trying to steal his company. Now Olivia tells me you're accusing him of being a criminal? Have you completely—" "Ethan," Olivia cut in sharply, rising from her chair. "That's enough. Mom didn't call Dad a criminal. She's reporting what she's learned from multiple sources, including Dad's own girlfriend. And it's not his company. It legally belongs to Mom. Has for 20 years. Ethan's eyes darted between us, disbelief etched on his features. "That can't be right. Dad founded Wilson Tech. He built it from nothing. He's always been the owner. I gestured for him to sit, keeping my voice calm despite the ache his automatic defense of Robert caused me. Let me explain everything, Ethan, from the beginning. For the next hour, I laid out the whole story. The initial investment from my savings, the years of behind-the-scenes work I'd done while Robert was the public face, the 2003 restructuring. That made me majority shareholder, Robert's affair with Jessica, his plans to divorce me, and finally, the evidence of embezzlement Jessica had provided. Ethan listened with growing dismay, occasionally interjecting with questions or protests that grew weaker as the evidence mounted. When I showed him the financial records Michael had verified, showing the suspicious transfers to Atlas Ventures, he fell silent. "I don't understand," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Why would Dad do this? He has everything. A successful company, a good marriage, a beautiful home. Why risk it all?" "I don't know," I admitted. Maybe he felt entitled to more. Maybe the company's success never satisfied something in him. Or maybe... I hesitated, not wanting to wound my son further. "Maybe what?" Ethan pressed. "Maybe he simply stopped loving me," I said quietly. "Maybe Jessica offered him something I couldn't. Youth, admiration, excitement. And once he decided to leave, he figured he might as well take everything he could with him." Ethan slumped back in his chair, looking suddenly exhausted. "I've always looked up to him, wanted to be like him, built my whole career trying to make him proud." Olivia moved to sit beside her brother, resting her head on his shoulder in a gesture of comfort they'd shared since childhood. "I know. We both did. But Mom deserves our support now. She's the one who's been wronged here." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression still troubled but resolving into something more determined. "What happens next? With the company? With the legal situation?" "I've instructed our attorneys to contact the authorities," I explained. "There will likely be an investigation, possibly criminal charges if the evidence holds up. As for the company, we're taking steps to secure our clients and intellectual property. I'll be meeting with the board tomorrow to discuss next steps." "And what about you, Mom?" Olivia asked gently. "Where will you live? What will you do?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. The past 2 days had been a whirlwind of revelations and reactions, leaving little time for planning my personal future. "I don't know yet. I can't imagine going back to the house right now." "Stay with us," Olivia offered immediately. "We have plenty of room, and the kids would love having their grandmother around." I smiled at her generosity. "Thank you, sweetheart. But I think I need some space of my own right now. Time to figure out who Barbara Wilson is outside of Robert's wife." "Whatever you decide, we're here for you," Olivia assured me, with Ethan nodding in agreement, although less enthusiastically. I knew it would take time for my son to fully process his father's betrayal. The pedestal he had placed Robert on was crumbling, and the resulting debris was painful to navigate. But at least he seemed willing to try, to consider that his father might not be the man he had always believed him to be. After my children left, I stood at the window of my suite, looking out at the Portland skyline, the same view I'd had from my office earlier, but from a different angle. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Everything in my life was still there, still recognizable, but I was seeing it all from a perspective I'd never had before. My phone chimed with an incoming email. It was from our head of human resources, confirming the all-hands meeting scheduled for Monday morning. The subject line read, "Leadership Transition Announcement." Such a bland, corporate phrase for what was essentially the public execution of Robert's career at Wilson Tech. Just as I was about to put my phone away, it rang. Unknown number. My finger hovered over the decline button, but something made me answer. Barbara Wilson. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Detective Harrington with the Portland Police Bureau, Financial Crimes Unit. I understand you've reported some potentially serious irregularities at your company?" "Yes," I confirmed, my heart beating faster. Our attorney was supposed to contact you tomorrow. He did reach out, but given the nature of the allegations and the amounts involved, I thought it best to begin our conversation immediately. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning? We arranged a meeting for 8 a.m. at the police station. After ending the call, I sank onto the edge of the bed, the reality of what was happening hitting me anew. This wasn't just a divorce anymore, or even a corporate power struggle. This was now a criminal investigation that could send Robert to prison. Despite everything he had done, the thought gave me no satisfaction. 45 years of marriage doesn't disappear overnight, even when betrayal cuts as deep as this. Part of me still cared what happened to him, still worried about the man who had been my partner for nearly half a century. I was pulled from these thoughts by another call, this one from Michael Chen. Barbara, I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but we have a situation. Robert showed up at the office about an hour ago with 2 men he claimed were IT consultants. Security stopped them before they could access the server room, but Robert became belligerent. There was an altercation, and the police were called. My stomach tightened. Was anyone hurt? No, nothing that serious. But Robert was escorted from the premises and given a formal trespass warning. If he returns, he'll be arrested. Where is he now? Michael hesitated. I'm not sure. He left with the 2 men in an unmarked van. Security got the license plate, though. I made a note to pass that information to Detective Harrington in the morning. Thank you for handling this, Michael. Have we secured the servers? Yes. We've implemented emergency protocols. No one gets in without dual authentication from both the head of IT and either you or me. We're also expediting the company-wide password resets and access level reviews. Good. I'll see you at the board meeting tomorrow afternoon. I paused, then added, and Michael? Be careful. Robert's not taking this well, obviously. After hanging up, I went through my evening routine mechanically, my mind racing despite my exhaustion. What had Robert been trying to access in the server room? What was on those systems that was so important he'd risk a confrontation with security? Even police involvement? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, my dreams when they came filled with fragmented images. Robert smiling at me across our first apartment, Jessica handing me the flash drive, Ethan's face crumbling as he realized his father wasn't the man he thought he was. I woke before dawn, giving up on rest entirely. After a quick shower and coffee, I headed to the police station, arriving early for my appointment with Detective Harrington. The detective was younger than I expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with intelligent eyes and a methodical way of speaking that was oddly reassuring. He led me to a small but comfortable interview room, assuring me this was not an interrogation, but a preliminary information-gathering session. Mrs. Wilson, I've reviewed the documents your attorney provided, he began, opening a folder on the table between us. Can you walk me through how you became aware of these financial irregularities? I explained everything. Jessica's revelation, Michael's verification, the threatening text from Robert, even the incident at the office last night. Detective Harrington took detailed notes, occasionally asking for clarification. And these transfers to Atlas Ventures, they've been happening for approximately 3 years? Yes, according to the records Jessica provided and our CFO confirmed. And prior to Ms. Miller's disclosure, you had no knowledge of these transactions? I felt a flush of embarrassment. No. I've been the legal majority owner since 2003, but I allowed my husband to handle day-to-day operations. I wasn't actively involved in financial oversight. The detective nodded without judgment. That's not unusual in family businesses. One more question. Do you have any reason to believe your husband might be a flight risk? The question caught me off guard, though it shouldn't have. According to Jessica, he's been planning to leave the country with the embezzled funds. He has the resources and potentially the motivation to flee, especially now that he knows we're onto him. Detective Harrington closed his notebook. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. This is very helpful. We'll be opening a formal investigation based on this information. In the meantime, I would advise increasing security at your company facilities and being cautious about your own personal safety as well. Do you think I'm in danger? I asked, surprised. Probably not physically, he clarified. But individuals facing significant white-collar criminal charges sometimes make desperate decisions. Better to be cautious. As I left the police station, my phone rang again. This time it was Ellie. Have you seen the Business Journal website this morning? She asked without preamble. No. Why? Robert gave an interview. Well, you need to see it for yourself. I'm texting you the link now. I waited until I was back in my car to open the link Ellie sent. The headline made my blood run cold. Wilson Tech founder claims hostile takeover by estranged wife. She's destroying my life's work. The article featured a large photo of Robert looking somber and dignified in his office, the Wilson Tech logo prominently displayed behind him. The text was worse than the headline. In an exclusive interview, Robert Wilson, founder and until recently CEO of Wilson Tech Solutions, claims his estranged wife Barbara has orchestrated a malicious campaign to seize control of the company he built from nothing over 4 decades. This is a deeply personal tragedy playing out in a business context, Wilson told the Business Journal. After 45 years of marriage, my wife has decided to leverage a technicality in our corporate structure. To push me out of my own company, Wilson Tech has been my life's work, my legacy. Now she's determined to destroy that legacy out of spite. Wilson claims the recent leadership change, which saw him removed as CEO and replaced by CFO Michael Chen on an interim basis, was the culmination of months of behind-the-scenes maneuvering by Barbara Wilson and key executives. There have been secret meetings, documents I wasn't allowed to see, decisions made without my input, Wilson alleges. When I confronted my wife about these concerns, she responded by publicly humiliating me at the Technology Leadership Conference and falsely claiming majority ownership of the company. When asked about allegations that he had been having an affair with his executive assistant, Jessica Miller, Wilson acknowledged that the two had developed a relationship, but insisted it began only after his marriage was effectively over. Barbara and I had been living separate lives for years, Wilson stated. She had withdrawn from both our marriage and the company. My relationship with Jessica isn't the cause of our problems. It's a result of them. Wilson also denied rumors of financial impropriety at Wilson Tech, calling them desperate fabrications designed to discredit him. I've dedicated my life to building Wilson Tech with integrity and innovation, he said. These baseless accusations are a shameful attempt to rewrite history and erase my contributions. I'm exploring all legal options to address these falsehoods and reclaim my rightful position. I sat in my car, hands shaking with rage as I finished the article. The sheer audacity of his lies, the calculated way he had positioned himself as the victim, it was breathtaking in its manipulation. Most infuriating was how believable it would sound to anyone who didn't know the truth. Robert had always been skilled at crafting narratives that cast him in the most favorable light. I called our corporate communications director immediately. Janet, have you seen the Business Journal piece? Yes, I was just about to call you. It's generating significant buzz online. We need a response, but it has to be measured. No direct accusations of criminal activity until the investigation is further along. Focus on the facts about company ownership and my roles over the years. I've already drafted something along those lines. I'll send it over for your approval within the hour. Next, I called our attorney. Richard, Robert's gone public with his side of the story. It's full of lies and mischaracterizations. I saw it, Richard confirmed grimly. Unfortunately, this complicates things from a legal perspective. We need to be very careful about our public statements now. Anything that could be construed as defamatory might undermine the criminal investigation. So we just let him control The narrative? Let him paint me as a vindictive wife destroying his life's work? Not at all. We focus on the provable facts. Your legal ownership stake, your contributions to the company over the years, the proper procedures followed in the leadership transition. We can refute his claims without making new allegations of our own. By the time I arrived at Wilson Tech for the board meeting, Robert's interview had spread throughout the company. I could feel eyes on me as I walked through the lobby, could hear the whispers trailing in my wake. Some employees looked sympathetic, others suspicious or confused. The corporate rumor mill was clearly working overtime. The boardroom was tense when I entered. Tom Davis was already there, along with the other board members, Diane Rodriguez from Legal, Henry Park from Product Development, and Fiona Matthews, our outside investor representative. Michael Chen sat at the far end, reviewing documents with our corporate secretary. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, I began, taking the chair at the head of the table, Robert's usual seat. I know the past few days have been challenging and confusing for everyone. My goal today is to provide clarity and establish a path forward for Wilson Tech. For the next hour, we discussed the immediate priorities: stabilizing client relationships, appointing a permanent CEO, addressing employee concerns, and preparing for the legal battles ahead. I was impressed by the board's professionalism. Despite the shocking nature of recent events, they remained focused on what was best for the company. The police have opened a formal investigation into the financial irregularities, I informed them. We should expect document requests and possibly interviews with key personnel in the coming weeks. Will this become public? Fiona asked, concern evident in her voice. As our primary investor, she had the most to lose if Wilson Tech's reputation suffered. Eventually, yes, I acknowledged. But for now, we're limiting our public statements to the leadership transition and my historical role in the company. We're not discussing the potential criminal aspects unless directly asked by authorities. As the meeting was wrapping up, Janet, our communications director, knocked and entered with a tablet in hand. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you all need to see. Robert has called a press conference. He's live now, outside the building. She turned the tablet so we could all see the screen. There was Robert on the steps of Wilson Tech headquarters, surrounded by microphones and cameras, looking every inch the wronged business leader. Cannot stand by while my life's work is stolen from me, he was saying, his voice steady with practiced sincerity. Today, I am announcing the formation of Wilson Innovation Group, a new venture that will carry forward the true spirit and vision of what I built at Wilson Tech before it was co-opted by individuals driven by personal vendettas. Rather than business excellence, the board members exchanged alarmed glances. Robert was essentially announcing a competing firm, one that would presumably target our clients and possibly our employees. Furthermore, Robert continued, I am joined today by several key clients who have chosen to follow me to this new venture rather than remain with a company in turmoil. The camera panned to show a group of people standing behind Robert. With a sinking feeling, I recognized the CEOs of West Coast Medical Group and Hendricks Financial, two of our largest accounts, representing nearly $15 million in annual revenue. This is a direct violation of the non-compete clause in his employment. Contract, Diane muttered, furiously taking notes. I barely heard her. My attention was fixed on another figure standing slightly behind Robert, Jessica Miller. Her presence was jarring after her seeming defection yesterday. Had that entire coffee shop confession been an elaborate ruse? A way to extract information about our plans while feeding me just enough truth to be believable? We already have offices secured in the South Waterfront District, Robert was saying, and will be fully operational within 30 days. Any Wilson Tech clients or employees who wish to join us in this new chapter are welcome to reach out through our website, which Goes live today. The press conference continued, but Janet muted the tablet. What do you want me to do? She asked, looking from me to the board members, all of whom seemed stunned by this brazen move. I took a deep breath, pushing down the mix of betrayal and anger bubbling inside me. Prepare a statement emphasizing that Robert Wilson is currently under investigation for financial irregularities at Wilson Tech. Note that any attempts to solicit our clients or employees may violate legal agreements and will be addressed accordingly. But keep it factual and professional, no personal attacks. After Janet left, the boardroom erupted in concerned discussion. How can he start a competing business when he's under investigation for embezzlement? Henry demanded. Legally, he can't enforce the non-compete if he was terminated for cause, Diane explained. But there are still confidentiality agreements, intellectual property protections, and client non-solicitation clauses that should apply. What about Jessica Miller? Michael asked, turning to me. Yesterday, she was turning over evidence against him. Today, she's standing by his side at a press conference? I shared my suspicion that her apparent cooperation might have been a strategy to learn our plans. We should assume anything I discussed with her has been relayed to Robert. This is going to be a bloodbath, Tom muttered, glancing at his phone. I'm already getting texts from clients asking what the hell is going on. Then we need to get ahead of this, I said firmly. Tom, I want you personally contacting every major client today. Michael, prepare a financial stability report. We can share with them. Diane, I need options for legal action against Robert's new venture. Fiona, can you reach out to our investors and reassure them? As they nodded in agreement, I felt a strange calm settling over me. This was war now, a corporate battle with personal stakes higher than any I'd faced before. Robert was trying to destroy what we had built together, to punish me for standing up to him by attacking the company that bore his name. But he had underestimated me. Again. He thought I would crumble under pressure, retreat into the supportive wife role I'd played for decades. He didn't understand that his betrayal had broken something fundamental in me. Not my spirit, but the chains of self-doubt and accommodation that had held me back for so long. After the board meeting, I returned to my office to find Eleanor, waiting for me, pacing by the window. I saw Robert's press conference, she said without preamble. That manipulative bastard. And Jessica. After everything she told us yesterday. The nerve of that woman. It was a calculated move, I said, settling behind my desk. Feed me enough verifiable information to establish credibility, then extract details about our plans. Classic intelligence? Gathering. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. You're being remarkably calm about this. Am I? I considered this. I suppose I am. Because for the first time in my marriage, I see Robert clearly. The charm, the charisma, the apparent devotion. They were tools he used to get what he wanted. Now that I'm no longer giving him what he wants, I'm seeing the man behind the mask. So what now? I turned to my computer and pulled up a document I'd been working on since dawn. Now we fight, but we fight smart. Robert thinks he knows me, the accommodating, behind-the-scenes wife who smoothed his path for 45 years. He's not prepared for the Barbara Wilson who's emerging now. The document on my screen was titled Operation Phoenix, a comprehensive strategy for not just defending Wilson Tech against Robert's attacks, but transforming it into something stronger than it had ever been under his leadership. The first rule of war, I told Eleanor, is to know your enemy. I've been married to Robert for 45 years. I know his strengths, his weaknesses, his blind spots, and I'm finally ready to use that knowledge. As I outlined my plan to Eleanor, I felt a surge of confidence unlike anything I'd experienced before. Robert had taken so much from me, my trust, my security, years of recognition for my contributions. But in doing so, he had inadvertently, given me something precious, the freedom to discover my own power. The battle ahead would be difficult, possibly ugly. But I was no longer fighting just to save Wilson Tech or to punish Robert for his betrayal. I was fighting to claim the life, an identity that should have been mine all along. Barbara Wilson was finally stepping out of the shadows, and nothing, not Robert, not his new company, not even my own lingering self-doubt, would push me back into darkness again. The next morning dawned gray and misty, Portland's characteristic, drizzle mirroring my mood as I reviewed the latest developments. Robert's announcement of Wilson Innovation Group had sent shockwaves through the industry, with technology blogs and business publications all covering what they were calling the Wilson War. Our stock had taken a hit, dropping nearly 8% in after-hours trading following Robert's press conference. I sipped my tea, scanning the flood of emails that had accumulated overnight. Client concerns, employee questions, media inquiries, all demanding immediate attention. But one message stood out from the rest, its subject line simply reading, "We need to talk." It was from Jessica Miller. My finger hovered over the delete button. After her betrayal yesterday, standing beside Robert at his press conference after day, supposedly turning against him, I had no reason to trust anything she might say. And yet, curiosity compelled me to open the message. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand if you never want to speak to me again. What you saw yesterday wasn't what it seemed. I'm still gathering evidence against Robert, but I needed to maintain his trust. To access certain records, please meet me at the Japanese Garden at 10 a.m. Come alone. I have information that could change everything. JM." I frowned, skepticism warring with intrigue. It could easily be a trap, some scheme concocted by Robert to lure me into a compromising position or away from the office during a critical time. But if there was even a small chance Jessica was being truthful, that she had valuable information about Robert's plans or evidence of his crimes, I couldn't afford to ignore it. I forwarded the email to Eleanor and Michael with a brief note explaining my intention to meet Jessica, but promising to stay in a public area and keep my phone's location services active. Then I called Detective Harrington. "Mrs. Wilson, I was just about to contact you," he said when he answered. "We've obtained warrants to search Atlas Ventures' banking records based on the evidence you provided." "That's good news," I replied. "But there's been a development. Jessica Miller appears to be working with my husband again. She stood beside him at a press conference yesterday, announcing his new competing venture. The same Jessica Miller who provided evidence of his embezzlement?" Harrington sounded understandably confused. "Yes. And now she's requesting a meeting with me, claiming she's still gathering evidence against him and yesterday was some kind of cover. I'm inclined to refuse, but if there's a chance she has more information." Detective Harrington was silent for a moment. "This could be valuable, but it's also risky. If you do meet her, stay in a public place, don't go anywhere private with her, and it might be helpful to record the conversation if Oregon law permits." "It's a one-party consent." "State," I confirmed, recalling a legal issue Wilson Tech had navigated years ago. "I'll record it. Let me know what you learn," Harrington said. "And Mrs. Wilson, be careful. Your husband is facing serious charges. People can act unpredictably when cornered." After ending the call, I dressed carefully in a casual but elegant pantsuit, armor of a sort for the confrontation ahead. The Japanese Garden was a deliberate choice on Jessica's part, I suspected. Located in Washington Park, it was one of Portland's most serene and beautiful attractions, but also one with winding paths, secluded corners, and multiple exits. Not ideal from a security perspective. I arrived early, paying the entrance fee, and finding a bench near the koi pond with good visibility of the surrounding area. The garden was relatively empty on this drizzly Tuesday morning. Just a few tourists with cameras and a group of art students sketching the meticulously pruned trees and carefully arranged stones. At precisely 10 a.m., Jessica appeared on the path leading to my bench. She looked different from our previous meetings, more subdued, wearing a simple raincoat and jeans rather than her usual polished business attire. Her eyes darted nervously around the garden as she approached. "Thank you for coming," she said, sinking onto the bench beside me but maintaining a respectful distance. "I wasn't sure you would after yesterday." "I almost didn't," I replied frankly. "Your appearance at Robert's press conference was quite convincing." She flinched slightly. It had to be. Robert doesn't tolerate wavering loyalty. "And where does your loyalty actually lie, Jessica? With Robert? With me? Or just with yourself?" She turned to face me directly, her expression earnest. "With the truth. I've made terrible mistakes, sleeping with your husband, helping him hide financial transactions, lying to protect myself, but I'm trying to make it right now." "By playing both sides?" I asked skeptically. "By gathering evidence that will be impossible for him to explain away," she countered. "The documents I gave you before were just the beginning. Robert has been more careful than you realize. The real evidence is in his personal cloud storage and encrypted email accounts." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. "And you have access to these?" "To some," she confirmed, "but not all. That's why I needed to maintain his trust, to stay close to him while I work to expose what he's really done." "Which is what, exactly?" I pressed. Jessica glanced around before lowering her voice. "It's not just embezzlement. Robert has been systematically stealing intellectual property from Wilson Tech for over 2 years, preparing for this exit. The company he announced yesterday? He's been building it in secret since 2021, using Wilson Tech resources, staff, and proprietary technology." This was worse than I'd imagined. If true, it meant Robert had been planning his betrayal, both personal and professional, for years, not months. "You have proof of this?" I asked. Jessica reached into her pocket and produced a small USB drive. "This contains emails between Robert and venture capitalists dating back to July 2021, discussing his plans to leave Wilson Tech and start a competing firm. It also has technical documents showing how he's been adapting Wilson Tech's proprietary algorithms for use in his new company." I made no move to take the drive. Why should I believe this isn't another manipulation? Another attempt to feed me partial truths while gathering intelligence for Robert? "Because I'm named in those emails too," Jessica admitted, her cheeks flushing with shame. "He recruited me specifically to help with this plan. I was hired not just as his assistant, but as his accomplice. The evidence on this drive incriminates me as well as him." That gave me pause. Why turn against him now? What changed? Jessica's composure cracked slightly, revealing genuine distress. "2 things. First, I discovered he's been manipulating. Me too. I'm not the only woman he's been involved with or promised a future to. There's a pattern, Mrs. Wilson. You weren't the first wife he betrayed, just the longest lasting." This didn't surprise me as much as it perhaps should have. In recent days, I'd been re-evaluating everything I thought I knew about Robert. "And the second reason?" "The violence," Jessica said quietly. "When things started going wrong, when you took control of the company, I saw a side of him I hadn't before. He broke things, threatened people, threatened me. I realized I wasn't his partner in this venture. I was just another tool he was using." I considered her words carefully. They aligned with what I'd been learning about Robert, his capacity for deception, his ruthlessness when crossed. And Jessica's claim about being manipulated rang true. Robert had always been skilled at identifying what people wanted and using that knowledge to bend them to his will. "If I take this drive," I said finally, "what do you expect in return?" "The same thing I asked for before, recognition of my cooperation if this goes to court." I know I'll face consequences for my role in all this. I'm not asking for immunity, just consideration. I took the USB drive, slipping it into my jacket pocket. I'll review this with our legal team and the detective handling the case. If the information proves valuable, I'll acknowledge your assistance. Jessica nodded, visibly relieved. There's one more thing you should know. Robert is meeting with Hendricks Financial today at noon. He's planning to demonstrate a platform that's essentially a clone of the system Wilson Tech developed for them. Last year, he's claiming it's a new proprietary system, but it's built on stolen code. This was actionable intelligence. If Robert was indeed presenting stolen intellectual property as his own, we could potentially stop him with an emergency injunction. Thank you for telling me, I said, already reaching for my phone to alert our legal team. Is there anything else I should know? Jessica hesitated, then said in a rush, Be careful around Tom Davis. He and Robert have been friends for 30 years. I've seen messages between them that suggest Tom might be feeding information back to Robert. This was painful to hear, but not entirely shocking. Tom and Robert had indeed been close for decades, golfing together, vacationing together with their families. It made sense that Tom's loyalties might be divided. I should go, Jessica said, standing. Robert's expecting me back at the office soon. I told him I was meeting with a potential client. As she turned to leave, I called after, Jessica, why are you really doing this? The truth. She paused, her back still to me. Because I made a mistake. A series of mistakes. And unlike Robert, I want to try to fix what I've broken. With that, she walked away, disappearing around a bend in the garden path. I remained on the bench for several minutes, turning the small USB drive over in my fingers, weighing Jessica's revelations and motivations. Was she telling the truth this time? Or was this another layer of deception in an increasingly complex game? Only one way to find out. I headed back to my car, calling our head of legal as I walked. Diane, I need an emergency team assembled in 1 hour. We may need to file for an injunction against Robert's new company immediately and discreetly limit Tom Davis's access to sensitive information until further notice. By the time I reached Wilson Tech headquarters, Diane had gathered our top legal advisors in a secure conference room. I handed over Jessica's USB drive to our IT security team first, having them scan it for malware before connecting it to our systems. It's clean, confirmed Kyle, our head of cybersecurity, after running the checks. Do you want me to access the contents? Yes, but in a secure environment, please. We need to preserve the chain of evidence in case this becomes part of the legal proceedings. While Kyle worked, I briefed Diane and the legal team on Jessica's claims about Robert's misappropriation of intellectual property and his planned demonstration to Hendricks Financial. If we can prove he's using stolen code, we can absolutely get an injunction, Diane said, already drafting notes. But we need solid evidence, not just Jessica Miller's word. Hopefully that's what's on the drive, I replied. But we should also check all access logs for our development servers over the past 2 years. Look for unusual download patterns, particularly from Robert's accounts or workstations. Kyle returned within 20 minutes, his expression grim, but determined. Mrs. Wilson, you're going to want to see this. The drive contains exactly what Jessica claimed. Emails dating back to 2021 outlining Robert's plan to create a competing company, plus technical specifications clearly derived from Wilson Tech's proprietary systems. He connected his laptop to the conference room's display, showing us a series of emails between Robert and various investors, including several marked highly confidential. The earliest was dated July 14, 2021, with the subject line, Project Phoenix, Initial Investment Structure. Phoenix, I murmured, struck by the ironic coincidence with my own operation name. The technical documents are even more damning, Kyle continued. pulling up code comparisons showing near-identical algorithms between Wilson Tech's systems and what Robert was calling the Wilson Innovation Platform. "This is blatant theft of intellectual property," Diane declared, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Judge Marshall for an emergency hearing. With this evidence, we should be able to stop today's demonstration and freeze any further development based on stolen code." While Diane worked on the legal front, I called Detective Harrington to update him on this new evidence. He was extremely interested in the emails documenting long-term planning, noting they established premeditation that would strengthen the criminal case. "I'll send an officer to collect the drive and proper chain of custody documentation," he said. "This could significantly impact the direction of our investigation." By noon, events were moving at lightning speed. Diane had secured an emergency hearing with Judge Marshall for 2 p.m. Our security team had identified multiple instances of Robert downloading proprietary code and documents over the previous 2 years, and we had dispatched a legal representative to Hendricks Financial to serve notice of potential intellectual property violations before Robert's demonstration could proceed. In the midst of this whirlwind of activity, I received a text from Olivia. "Mom, Dad just showed up at our house looking for you. He seems not well. Should I call the police?" A chill ran through me. "No," I texted back quickly. "Don't engage." "Is Daniel home?" "Yes, he's keeping Dad on the porch. Won't let him in." "Good. Tell Daniel to say I'm not there and haven't been in contact. Then both of you stay inside with the doors locked until Dad leaves." "What's going on, Mom?" "He's saying weird things about you stealing his future, destroying his legacy." "I'll explain everything later. Just stay safe for now. Call me when he's gone." I immediately phoned Detective Harrington again, informing him of Robert's unexpected appearance at our daughter's home. "He's never acted threatening toward our children before," I explained, "but his behavior has been increasingly erratic." "I'll send a patrol car to do a welfare check," he assured me. "Given the circumstances, we should document any unusual behavior." My next call was to Eleanor. "Can you go to Olivia's house? Robert showed up there looking for me, and I'm worried." "I'm on my way," she said without hesitation. "Should I bring my taser?" Despite the tension of the moment, I smiled slightly. "That won't be necessary. The police are sending someone, and Daniel is keeping Robert outside. I just want someone I trust to be with Olivia until we're sure Robert has left the area. Consider it done." "And Barbara?" "Don't worry about the hearing. You focus on keeping everyone safe. Diane can handle the legal proceedings." She was right, of course. As much as I wanted to be present for the emergency injunction hearing, family safety had to take priority. I called Diane to let her know she would need to represent Wilson Tech without me. "Not a problem," she assured me. "With the evidence we have, this should be straightforward. I'll call as soon as we have the judge's decision." Just as I was about to head to Olivia's house myself, Michael Chen appeared in my office doorway, his expression troubled. "Barbara, we may have another problem. Tom Davis is missing." "Missing?" "He didn't show up for the client meeting with West Coast Medical this morning. His assistant can't reach him, and his calendar was wiped clean. Security says his access card was used to enter the building at 5 a.m. today, but there's no record of him leaving." This was concerning on multiple levels, especially in light of Jessica's warning about Tom's potential divided loyalties. Have security check the server rooms and any areas with sensitive materials or equipment, and pull the surveillance footage from 5 a.m. While Michael coordinated with security, I finally got a call from Olivia. "Mom, Dad's gone. The police came and he left without incident. But I'm worried about him. He didn't look good. Unshaven, clothes rumpled, eyes bloodshot. This isn't like him." "I know, sweetheart. I'm concerned too. But right now, the most important thing is keeping everyone safe while we sort through this legal situation." "What legal situation? Mom, what's really going on?" I sighed, realizing I couldn't shield my children from the full truth any longer. I'm on my way to your house now. I'll explain everything when I get there. When I arrived at Olivia's comfortable Tudor-style home in the West Hills, Eleanor's car was already in the driveway alongside a Portland police cruiser. Inside, I found Olivia and Daniel in the living room with Eleanor and a young police officer who introduced himself as Officer Torres. Mrs. Wilson, we responded to the call about your husband's concerning behavior, Officer Torres explained. He left peacefully when we arrived, but he did make some statements that, given the context of the ongoing investigation, we thought should be documented. What did he say? I asked, sitting beside Olivia on the sofa. He referred to you as stealing his life and destroying everything he built. When I asked if he was making threats, he said, and I quote, "It's not a threat, it's a promise. She'll regret what she's done." Olivia gasped softly beside me. Daniel, always the protective son-in-law, asked, "Isn't that enough for a restraining order?" "It's in a gray area," Officer Torres admitted. "But given the circumstances, I would recommend Mrs. Wilson consider applying for one. In the meantime, we'll increase patrols in both your neighborhoods." After the officer left, Olivia turned to me with worry etched across her face. "Mom, you need to tell us everything. Now." For the next hour, I laid out the complete situation: the embezzlement, the intellectual property theft, the years of planning behind Robert's betrayal, and the current legal proceedings to stop him from using stolen technology. Olivia and Daniel listened in stunned silence, occasionally exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their shock and concern. "I can't believe Dad would do this," Olivia said finally. "Cheat on you, yes, sadly. I can imagine that. But stealing from his own company? Planning it for years while pretending everything was normal? That's pathological." "It explains a lot, actually," Daniel mused. "The way he's always been so secretive about certain aspects of the business, even when I asked for advice. For my own company. The mysterious trips that weren't on his public calendar. The private server he maintained at home that no one was allowed to touch. This last bit was news to me. Private server? What private server?" Daniel looked surprised. "In his home office. There's a server rack he installed about 2 years ago. He told me it was for backing up personal photos and documents, but it seemed like overkill for that purpose." My mind raced. A private server installed around the same time he began planning his exit from Wilson Tech? That couldn't be coincidence. "We need to get access to that server," I said. "It could contain additional evidence of his plans and activities." "But how?" Olivia asked. "It's in the house, and I'm guessing Dad changed the locks by now." "I may still have legal rights to enter," I pointed out. "We haven't filed for divorce yet, and my name is on the deed. But given Robert's current state of mind, I don't want to risk a confrontation." "What about a court order?" Eleanor suggested. "If Detective Harrington believes the server might contain evidence relevant to the criminal investigation." "That's our best option," I agreed, already texting the detective with this new information. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. From Diane. "Barbara, good news. Judge Marshall granted our emergency injunction. Robert is prohibited from demonstrating, selling, or further developing any technology derived from Wilson Tech's intellectual property. The Marshalls are serving the papers at Hendricks Financial right now." "Excellent work, Diane. What about Tom Davis? Any word?" "Nothing yet. But security found something interesting on the surveillance footage. Tom was in the building at 5 a.m., but he wasn't alone. Robert was with him." This confirmed my worst fears about Tom's loyalty. "Have they checked the R&D labs yet?" "Yes, and nothing appears to be missing. But Kyle wants to do a deep scan of the development servers to see if any files were copied or modified. Tell him to proceed immediately. And Diane, let's call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Given Tom's apparent collusion with Robert, we need to discuss his removal from the board and termination from the company." After ending the call, I updated everyone on the injunction and the situation with Tom. Daniel, ever practical, asked the question that had been hovering unspoken. What's Robert's endgame here? Even if he managed to start a competing company with stolen technology, the legal challenges would be insurmountable. He must know that. I'm not sure rational planning is driving his actions anymore, I replied. This feels increasingly like a vendetta. Against me, against Wilson Tech, against anyone who challenges his sense of entitlement. Eleanor nodded grimly. Men like Robert don't handle loss of control well, especially men who've never faced serious consequences for their actions. My phone buzzed again, Detective Harrington returning my text about the server. Mrs. Wilson, we're preparing a warrant request for the server based on the new information. Given the volatility of digital evidence, Judge Reynolds has agreed to expedite the process. We should have the warrant within hours, not days. Thank you, Detective. Please let me know when you plan to execute it. I'd like to be present if possible. That can be arranged, though you'll need to remain outside with the officers until the premises are secured. Based on your husband's recent behavior, we're approaching this with abundant caution. After the call, I sat back, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. The past few days had been a non-stop whirlwind of revelations, confrontations, and rapid decision-making. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. The end of my marriage, the betrayal by someone I'd trusted for 45 years, the need to protect both myself and the company from Robert's increasingly desperate actions. Mom, you're dead on your feet, Olivia observed gently. Why don't you rest here until we hear about the warrant? The guest room is all made up. The offer was tempting. The thought of returning to my empty hotel suite held little appeal, and there was comfort in being surrounded by family during this crisis. That's a good idea, actually. Thank you. While Olivia prepared the guest room, Eleanor pulled me aside. Barbara, we need to talk about your security. Robert's behavior is escalating. The threats, showing up at Olivia's looking for you, these aren't good signs. You think he might try to harm me? The idea seemed far-fetched despite everything. Robert had never been physically violent, not in all our years together. I think people in his position, facing criminal charges, public humiliation, loss of status and control, sometimes make terrible choices. Better to be cautious than sorry. She had a point. What do you suggest? A security service, at least temporarily. Professional, discreet protection until this situation stabilizes. I started to protest, then remembered Robert's text. You have no idea what's coming. At the time, I'd interpreted it as a threat to my professional position, but what if it had been something more sinister? I'll consider it, I promised Eleanor. But first, let's focus on securing that server. If it contains what I suspect it might, Robert will have far more immediate concerns than trying to intimidate me. As Olivia showed me to the guest room, my phone chimed with an email notification. The sender was Robert, the subject line simply, "One last chance." I hesitated before opening it, steeling myself for more threats or accusations. Instead, I found something unexpected. Barbara, I'm offering you one final opportunity to end this war before we both lose everything we've built. Meet me at the Riverfront Grill tonight at 8 p.m. Come alone. No lawyers, no police. Just you and me, like it used to be. We can still resolve this without destroying each other. This is your only chance for a peaceful resolution. R. I stared at the message, conflicting emotions surging through me. Part of me, a smaller part than I would have expected, still wanted to believe Robert could be reasoned with, that there was a path to resolving this conflict without further damage. But the rational, newly awakened part of me recognized this for what it almost certainly was: another manipulation, another trap. I forwarded the email to Detective Harrington with a brief note. FYI, I have no intention of meeting him alone. His response came quickly. Wise decision. We'll have the warrant for the server within the hour. Stand by for details. As I lay down on Olivia's guest bed, intending just to rest my eyes for a few minutes, I found myself reflecting on the stark contrast between the Robert I thought I knew and the man he had revealed himself to be. Had he always been capable of such calculated betrayal? Had I been blind to his true nature for 45 years? Or had something changed, warped him from the ambitious but fundamentally decent young man I'd married into this desperate, vindictive stranger? Perhaps I would never know. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my terms, not his. Barbara Wilson was no longer the accommodating wife waiting in the wings while Robert took center stage. Whatever Robert had planned, whether at the Riverfront Grill tonight or in the boardrooms and courtrooms to come, I would be ready. Not as his victim, not as his audience, but as his equal, perhaps at long last as his reckoning. Detective Harrington's team executed the search warrant for our home at precisely 6 o'clock that evening. I waited in an unmarked police car, across the street, watching as officers methodically entered the house I had shared with Robert for 3 decades. The Grand Colonial, with its manicured lawn and flowering magnolia, had once represented everything I was proud of, a physical manifestation of our success, our partnership, our life together. Now it felt like a museum of lies, housing artifacts from a marriage that had never been what I believed. Robert's not on the premises, Detective Harrington informed me, sliding into the car beside me after the initial sweep. The house appears untouched since you left it. The server is in his office, I explained. Behind the bookcase on the east wall, there's a hidden door. Press the 3rd shelf from the bottom on the right side. Harrington raised an eyebrow. Hidden door? That's interesting. Robert always had a flair for the dramatic, I said with a tired smile. He called it his war room, said he needed a private space to strategize away from distractions. I never gave it much thought until now. As we waited for the tech team to locate and secure the server, I received another text from Robert. I see you've chosen war over reconciliation. Remember, I know all your weaknesses, Barbara. This won't end well for either of us. I showed the message to Harrington, who frowned deeply. This crosses the line into harassment, possibly intimidation. We should add this to the documentation for a restraining order. 20 minutes later, an officer emerged from the house carrying a small black server rack. Found it exactly where Mrs. Wilson indicated, she reported. It appears to be a custom, set up with multiple drives. Is it powered down properly? Harrington asked. Yes, sir. Digital forensics team followed standard procedures. Chain of custody is being maintained. Harrington turned to me. We'll need to process this at the station. Would you like to come along, or would you prefer to return to your hotel? The thought of going back to the hotel alone, with Robert's threatening message still fresh in my mind, was unsettling. I'd like to come with you, if that's allowed. The police station was quieter than I expected on a Tuesday evening. I was escorted to a small but comfortable conference room, while the forensics team began working on Robert's server in a lab down the hall. Detective Harrington arranged for coffee and sandwiches, acknowledging it might be a long wait. How long have you been married, Detective? I asked as we settled in for the wait, noticing the wedding band on his left hand. 12 years, he replied with a genuine smile. My wife's a pediatrician. We met when I was investigating a case at her hospital. 12 years, I repeated thoughtfully. That's when you're still building something together, when you still see the best in each other. Harrington studied me with compassionate eyes. Mrs. Wilson, if you don't mind my asking, when did you first suspect your husband might not be the man you thought he was? The question caught me off guard, but I found myself wanting to answer. Truthfully? There were small moments over the years, inconsistencies in his stories, decisions that didn't quite align with the values he claimed to hold. But I excused them, rationalized them. When you've invested decades in a relationship, you become skilled at explaining away the cracks in the foundation. And now? Now I wonder if I ever really knew him at all, I admitted. Or if I just knew the version of Robert Wilson he wanted me to see. Our conversation was interrupted by a knock. At the door, a young technician poked her head in, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. "Detective Harrington? You're going to want to see this." We followed her to the digital forensics lab, where multiple monitors displayed the contents of Robert's server. A technician in glasses pointed to one screen showing a folder labeled simply, "Exit Strategy." "This is the most immediately relevant material we've found," he explained. "It contains detailed plans for establishing Wilson Innovation Group dating back to January 2021, including schedules for intellectual property acquisition, lists of Wilson Tech clients to target, and financial projections." He clicked through several documents, each more damning than the last. There were templates for employee recruitment emphasizing the poaching of key Wilson Tech staff. There were custom-developed tools designed to extract and obfuscate proprietary code. Most disturbing was a document titled Contingency Plans that outlined responses to various scenarios, including one labeled Barbara Discovers Ownership, Rights. The technician opened this file, revealing a detailed strategy for discrediting me if I ever attempted to assert my legal position as majority owner. It included plans to question my mental stability, suggest early-onset dementia, imply substance abuse problems, and even manufacture evidence of financial impropriety on my part. "He was prepared for me to discover the truth," I said quietly, a chill running through me. "He had a plan to destroy my credibility if I ever stood up to him." "There's more," the technician continued, opening another folder. "We found communications with someone named TD, discussing internal Wilson Tech information, board deliberations, and strategy decisions. Based on the context, we believe this is Thomas Davis." "Tom," I murmured, the confirmation of his betrayal stinging despite its predictability. "How long has he been feeding information to Robert?" "The correspondence begins in March 2022, though there are references to phone conversations prior to that." Detective Harrington turned to me. "Mrs. Wilson, this is more than sufficient evidence to support charges of corporate espionage and intellectual property theft, in addition to the embezzlement we were already investigating. With your permission, I'd like to issue an arrest warrant for your husband immediately." The gravity of the moment wasn't lost on me. This was the point of no return, not just for my marriage, which was already beyond salvation, but for Robert's life and legacy. An arrest would mean public humiliation, possibly prison time, certainly the end of his career and reputation. Despite everything he had done, some small part of me hesitated. This was the man who had held my hand through my father's funeral, who had paced hospital corridors when Olivia had pneumonia as a child, who had danced with me under stars on our 40th anniversary. But that man was gone, if he had ever truly existed. In his place was someone who had methodically planned to betray me, to steal what we had built together, to destroy me if necessary to get what he wanted. "Yes," I said firmly. "Issue the warrant." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. As the police mobilized to locate and arrest Robert, I returned to Olivia's house, where Eleanor, Daniel, and Ethan were now gathered. I explained the discovery of the server and its damning contents, watching as my son's face hardened with each new revelation about his father's betrayal. "I can't believe he would do this to you," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "To any of us. Everything I thought I knew about him." "I know," I said gently, reaching for his hand. "It's a lot to process." My phone rang. Michael Chen calling with updates from Wilson Tech. Barbara, word is spreading about Robert's arrest warrant. The stock is volatile and we're getting a flood of media inquiries. How do you want to handle this? Transparently, I decided. Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning. We'll address everything directly. The leadership transition, the legal actions against Robert and his new venture, our path forward. No hiding, no spinning. Just the truth. After the call, I found myself suddenly exhausted, the adrenaline of the past days finally ebbing away. Eleanor must have noticed, as she gently suggested I try to get some rest. The police will call when they have news, she reminded me. There's nothing more you can do tonight. I nodded, retreating to the guest room but finding sleep elusive. Just as I was finally drifting off around midnight, my phone buzzed with a call from Detective Harrington. Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but I thought you should know. We've been unable to locate your husband. He's not at his apartment, his office, or any of his known associates' homes. His passport hasn't been used, and his credit cards show no activity since this afternoon. You think he's running? I asked, fully awake now. It's possible, or he could simply be staying somewhere we haven't identified yet. We've issued a BOLO, be on the lookout, to all regional law enforcement agencies. We'll find him. After the call, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering where Robert might have gone and what he might do next. The man I had discovered in recent days, calculating, vengeful, willing to destroy what he couldn't possess, was capable of far more than I had ever imagined. Morning came too quickly, gray light filtering through the curtains as I dressed for the press conference. I chose a structured navy suit that conveyed both authority and dignity, armor for the public battle. Ahead, Eleanor arrived to accompany me, bringing coffee and reassurance in equal measure. You're doing the right thing, she said as we drove to Wilson Tech headquarters, taking control of the narrative, facing this head-on. The scene at Wilson Tech was controlled chaos. Security had been quadrupled, with guards checking IDs at every entrance. Media vans lined the street, and a temporary press area had been set up in the main lobby, complete with podium and company backdrop. Michael met me at the service entrance, updating me on preparations. The board is fully briefed and unanimously supportive. Tom Davis has been formally removed as a director and terminated as an employee. We've prepared statements addressing all likely questions, including Robert's disappearance. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, as I reviewed my notes in a conference room adjacent to the lobby, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Wilson? A woman's voice asked when I answered. This is Sergeant Martinez with the Oregon State Police. We've located your husband's vehicle at Vista Point Overlook on Highway 26. There's no sign of Mr. Wilson, but we found a note addressed to you in the car. My heart raced. What does it say? I'm not authorized to open it, ma'am. But given the circumstances, an empty vehicle at a clifftop overlook, we're treating this as a potential suicide situation. Search and rescue teams are checking the ravine below. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Whatever Robert had done, however deeply he had betrayed me, I had never wished him harm. The thought that he might have taken his own life rather than face the consequences of his actions was both shocking and profoundly sad. I need to go there, I said, already gathering my things. Eleanor drove me to Vista Point, neither of us speaking during the 30-minute journey. The scenic overlook had been cordoned off with police tape, multiple emergency vehicles parked haphazardly across the normally peaceful viewpoint. Robert's silver Mercedes was in the center of the area, driver's door still open, keys in the ignition. Sergeant Martinez met us at the perimeter. Mrs. Wilson, I'm sorry to meet under these circumstances. The note is still in the vehicle if you'd like to read it. With Eleanor beside me, I approached the car. On the passenger seat was a sealed envelope with my name written in Robert's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it and unfolded the single page inside. Barbara, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not in the way everyone will assume. I'm not jumping off any cliff. But I won't face public humiliation or prison. I've made arrangements. Know this. I did love you once in my way, but I was never meant for just one life, one company, one identity. What you saw as betrayal, I saw as evolution. The only mistake I made was underestimating you. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. Goodbye. R. I read it twice, then handed it to Sergeant Martinez. He's not dead. This is just another manipulation, another way to control the narrative. She scanned the note with a professional eye. I agree this suggests he's fled rather than harmed himself. We'll expand the search parameters and alert federal authorities in case he's attempting to leave the country. As we drove back to Portland, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. Robert was gone, whether temporarily or permanently remained to be seen. But his hold over me, over Wilson Tech, was broken. Whatever he had planned next would unfold far from the life we had built together. The press conference went ahead as scheduled, though we adjusted the messaging to acknowledge Robert's disappearance. I stood at the podium, cameras flashing, and told our story with unflinching honesty. The years of building Wilson Tech together, my legal ownership since 2003, the discovery of Robert's embezzlement and corporate espionage, the legal actions underway to protect the company's assets and intellectual property. Wilson Tech Solutions was never just one person's vision, I concluded, looking directly into the cameras. It has always been a collective achievement, the work of hundreds of talented, dedicated professionals, myself included. While the circumstances that brought me to this podium today are painful and unprecedented, the future of Wilson Tech remains bright. We will continue to lead with integrity, innovation, and transparency. Thank you. The questions afterward were predictably focused on Robert's whereabouts and the criminal charges pending against him. I answered each one directly, neither defending nor condemning the man who had been my husband for 45 years. He had made his choices. I had made mine. In the weeks that followed, the story of Robert's betrayal and disappearance became business legend, featured in national publications and industry case studies. The authorities tracked his movements to Mexico, then lost him after he apparently obtained false identification documents. The international search continued, but with diminishing urgency as the immediate case against him solidified even in his absence. Wilson Tech not only survived the crisis but thrived under new leadership. After 3 months as interim CEO, Michael Chen accepted the permanent position, with me serving as chairwoman of the board. We implemented governance reforms ensuring no single individual could wield unchecked power within the company. We rebuilt client relationships damaged by Robert's actions, even winning back Hendricks Financial after they experienced technical problems with Wilson Innovation Group's hastily deployed platform. As for me, I found a new rhythm to my life. Professional fulfillment at Wilson Tech, personal joy in deeper relationships with my children and friends, unexpected pleasure in the freedom to define myself on my own terms. I moved from Olivia's guest room to a light-filled condo in the Pearl District, filling it with art and books I'd always loved, but Robert had dismissed as too modern or too intellectual. 6 months after Robert's disappearance, I received a postcard from an unidentified tropical location. There was no message, just a single chess piece drawn in the corner, a queen, standing alone on an empty board. I knew it was from Robert, his final acknowledgement of my victory in the game he had started. I didn't keep the postcard. I didn't need to. After 45 years together, my husband had left me for his assistant, never realizing that I already owned his company. But in losing everything he thought was his, Robert had inadvertently given me something priceless, the chance to discover who Barbara Wilson truly was and what she was capable of becoming. And that was a gift I would never return. Up next, You've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.